are located on the unceded traditions of the Coast Salish nations of Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh.
Good afternoon, I'm Caroline Doyle, and these are your BCIT 330 news headlines. Artificial intelligence is impacting the computer science industry. Our reporter Thomas Adams has more on the effects it's having on the workforce.
Developments for artificial intelligence have skyrocketed in the past few years. In response, post-secondary institutions have had to drastically change their curriculum. Thomas Lane and the faculty at the Computer Information Technology program at BCIT are adapting their teaching styles, not for students to compete with AI in the workforce, but to use it as a tool to make them more proficient employees.
We're teaching them to use it, and in theory, teaching them to acquire those higher order skills where they can be the ones leveraging the tool.
Although productivity using AI is down on average in industry, Lane is committed to teaching students how to better utilize their skills. Thomas Adams, BCIT News.
The City of Vancouver development plans have been released and they're looking for input. Our reporter Gabe Liesi has more.
The City of Vancouver recently released its official development plan for public feedback. The draft plan is set to lay out space for parks, housing, and schools over the next 30 years as Vancouver continues to grow. Michael Mortensen, the director of Livable City Planning in Vancouver, says the city has had a broad patchwork of development plans over the last half-century.
We've had a lot of policy that may not be relevant today. So I think one of the goals of the ODP should be to simplify the planning system so that it's intelligible to normal people.
The completed plan must be reviewed and adopted by the city before June 2026. Gabe Liesi, BCIT News.
Vancouver City Council is contemplating plans to create a new corporation specifically tasked with developing an estimated 4,000 units of market rental housing on 6 city properties. The proposal would make the city the sole shareholder in the new corporation and allow for what one official described as generational wealth for the city of Vancouver. Brad Foster, the director of Vancouver Housing Development Office, told council the units would provide very significant revenues to the city on an annual basis once they're built. A report to council says the 6 city properties have an assessed value of more than $411 million, and the plan would need $8 million in startup costs. Foster says development agreements would involve the private sector with the goal to boost the city's equity position and its profitability. The report to council warns that there is risk involved in rental housing development and operation, ranging from subpar returns on investment to actual financial loss, but says those risks can be reduced with proper safeguards. Housing developments continue to climb in Metro Vancouver, but the Build Schools Now initiative says new housing developments lack social infrastructure. This Build Schools Now initiative, which consists of parents, families, and children, rallied today in front of the Vancouver City Hall. The initiative says it comes after the rezoning and subdivisions of much-needed elementary schools. One school planned for Olympic Village has received pushback from residents who say the intended size won't fulfill the needs of nearby residents. Our reporter Arden McLeod spoke with Olympic Village resident Helen Louie, who says she would prefer her child attend a school closer to home.
Yeah, if the school is built by then, and if the school is big enough and Charlie can get into there, that would be amazing. But if he can't, then unfortunately what we'd have to end up doing is getting a second car and creating congestion just to drive to the next catchment, which a lot of people are currently opposing the additional height for because they're worried about congestion. But actually, we would be creating congestion if he can't get into Olympic Village.
The Vancouver School Board projection shows schools will face severe overcrowding, and many are forecasted to operate at 150% or more in 6 years. The Build Schools Now movement hopes for more coordination between the city, school board, and province for housing and complete neighborhoods that include essentials like schools, childcare, and public spaces. A humpback calf was seen with a deep gash after a reported ferry strike off of Vancouver. A group representing whale watching operations has shared a photo of a young humpback with a deep gash in its back, which says it was likely inflicted by a ferry in waters off of Vancouver last week. The Pacific Whale Watch Association says the calf was spotted on Monday, a few kilometers from the scene of Friday's reported collision with a Hello Ferries vessel. The photograph showed a deep slice in the whale's back at the back of the dorsal fin. The Whale Watching Association says it was seen Monday swimming with its mother, known as Zigzag, and is urging caution from boaters. The Fisheries Department has said the ferry company is cooperating with its investigation. Saskatchewan's opposition NDP plans on grilling Premier Scott Moe's government over affordability issues, healthcare, and canola tariffs as the legislature starts tomorrow. NDP House Leader Nicole Sarr says crime is also out of control in the province.
People who used to feel safe walking their dogs at night in their neighborhood don't anymore. And that's something that we, as elected representatives, need to take seriously.
Moe has said the province will touch on economic and community safety issues in the throne speech. Statistics Canada says grocery prices went up 4% in September compared with the same month a year ago, despite the removal of counter tariffs. Michael Von Masseau, food economist at the University of Guelph, says it will take time for price decreases to reflect in some grocery items.
Coffee, as an example, it comes in, it gets roasted, it gets packaged, it sits on a store shelf, and then it's less perishable. So it'll take more time for that product that was tariffed to move through the system.
A CIBC economist is arguing a surprise jump in the September inflation reading won't be enough to turn the Bank of Canada off a rate cut next week. StatsCan says the annual rate of inflation jumped to 2.4% in September, up half a percentage point from August. But senior economist Andrew Grantham says there are enough signs of weakness in the economy to justify lower rates.
You know, we do still think that the Bank of Canada should cut interest rates at least one more time to help accelerate, if possible, this recovery that we're seeing develop within the Canadian economy.
Statistics Canada blamed changes in gas prices and a 4% jump in costs at the grocery store for fueling the higher annual inflation rate. A 2025 report from the Auditor General of Canada says the Canadian Armed Forces lacks suitable housing for its members. The report says 3 Canadian Armed Forces bases were audited, showing 32 buildings with high priority repairs. The Auditor General of Canada, Karen Hogan, says there are 45 buildings averaging 60 years old. Hogan says these conditions aren't something the public or Canadian Armed Forces should be living in. The Prime Minister of National Defence, David McGuinty, says they have work to do.
This is long overdue. For decades now, governments successively have not been making the investments we need to make in our armed forces. We're doing that.
McGuinty says they are finding creative ways to solve military housing issues. Additionally, in the report, it shows that the Canadian Armed Forces did not meet their recruiting goals, falling short by 4,700. Karen Hogan, the Auditor General of Canada, says there's infrastructure that needs to be handled.
I think my 2 reports today highlighted that the Canadian Armed Forces isn't recruiting enough members when only 1 in 13 who apply, and there are thousands who apply, only make it to basic training. And then they don't have enough housing for them. So this is going to impact retention.
The report says that these gaps in personnel can affect the force's ability to respond to threats, emergencies, conflicts, and accomplish their missions. And now for sports. Canadian Pride is electric today after the Toronto Blue Jays win Game 7 last night. This win sets a return to the World Series for the first time since 1993. Here's former Blue Jay Joe Carter describing his game-winning home run for Toronto in 1993.
When I hit it, it kind of went through the lights, and I didn't know for sure because I lost it. As soon as I hit it, I lost it. But when I looked up, I saw the tail of it, and I saw it was going to be out. and it was like it was so much in slow motion. And I can just imagine what the bench was like because, I was still, hadn't even touched first base yet, hadn't even got halfway.
Prime Minister Mark Carney spoke to the Canadian press. Here's what he had to say about the win.
I'm super pumped for the World Series, and as I told the president in the U.S., we're going to be coming down there for that.
The Blue Jays are set to play the LA Dodgers for the first game of the World Series this Friday at Rogers Center. The NBA season begins next Tuesday. The league will be featuring a record 135 players born outside of the United States. All of the 30 teams in the NBA have at least one international player. 71 of these players come from Europe, where the NBA is still in talks with the International Basketball Federation to start a new league. The NBA is also expected to finalize its plan for an international all-star format. A December Spanish League soccer game between Barcelona and Villarreal is set to play in Miami has been canceled. This came after players, clubs, and fans opposed the game taking place outside of their country. The league has received approval from soccer governing bodies, but the promoter pulled the plug on the event. The league says uncertainty has arisen in Spain surrounding the expansion of the league and that they deeply regret their attempt to expand it around the world. Israeli football club Maccabi Tel Aviv has announced it will decline tickets for a Europa League game against Aston Villa next month, regardless of growing calls for the English city of Birmingham to reverse a ban it imposed on the Israel club's fans. The ban has faced criticism, including from the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Maccabi Tel Aviv emphasized the safety of its fans in a statement on Tuesday. The British government says it's been working to resolve the Europa League issue amid heightened concerns about anti-Semitism. And now for weather. In Burnaby, we are seeing a little bit of sun peeking through the clouds. However, there's still pockets of rain. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Caroline Doyle.
When I tell people that I studied journalism, they immediately say, oh, you want to be a reporter. But I think, in my case personally, I really want to go into magazines, PR, social media, and I think here at school we learn a lot of skills that allow you to go into that world because you learn how to write for social media, social content, for websites,